know about you, but I'm so glad the choir's back. If you only knew how much fun it is to be in the choir. We are the funnest group in this church. Of course, I am a little prejudiced on that. I have to get out my Kleenex because I know I'm going to need them. First of all, my name is Ruth Stiehl. My husband and I have been members of this church since Nancy came up to me at a JU basketball game and asked me if I would sing a solo in this church. And she's always said she was so surprised that I agreed. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't I want to come and sing in church? I've been doing it since I was like 14, I think. And of course, I said yes, and the rest of it is history. And we've been here, 30 years. I hate to even think how long it's been. I would also like to thank Nathan for giving the elders a chance to share the pulpit with them for these 3 Sundays. Either it was really dumb or you were very brave, or it's working out well. I have a feeling it's working out pretty well. I know that each of us elders, we have our own story to tell. Each one is unique with a common theme of how God has touched us and changed our lives. This morning, I would like to focus on what fear can do to our lives and how the Lord is always there to see us through anything. And I really mean anything. After these past 8 weeks, it's been anything. I know that each of us have experienced a time when we were so afraid that the first thing we did was pray. Well, I've had a few such experiences in the last 8 weeks with my husband. We have had 4 admissions to Baptist Beaches, 2 admissions to St. Vincent South in 8 weeks. I'm really tired of hospitals, and I'm a nurse. Perhaps the scariest experience came about 10 days ago. Paul, my husband of many years, I was 4 when we married, he became totally confused while we were sitting in the doctor's office waiting to see the doctor. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know who he was. All he could say was, "Somebody please help me. Would you please help me make the pain go away? Somebody please do something." Of course, we called 911. 911 has got to be an old friend at our house. The ambulance came, and off we went to the ER at Beaches Hospital. And I will give you a very strong endorsement for Beaches Hospital. I contacted my son and his wife and told them what had happened and asked if Mark, my son, who is here today, if he could meet me at the hospital. While all of this was going on, I prayed, "Please let Paul be all right. Please don't take him away from me. Please let the doctors find out what is wrong and fix it. Please put your healing arms around him. Please make him okay." All the usual things that one prays when a precious loved one is stricken with some mysterious illness. Well, Mark met me at the ER, and we waited in the treatment area while Paul was in imaging. Interestingly enough, the neurologist, Dr. Casey Kerrigan, played Little League Baseball with our other son, Eric, and he was a physician who treated Paul 4 years ago when he had a stroke. He was a friend at a time we really needed a friend. So Casey took us back into the imaging area and explained all the diagnostic tests that they were doing, plus telling us what the treatment was in place already. We watched Paul as they were putting him in the CAT scan, and he was struggling with confusion. And you could tell he was very upset. He knew his name was Paul. He did not know anything else. He kept having neuro checks. My favorite one was when they asked him his age, and he said he was 40. And I said, boy, is that wishful thinking. Well, I notified Leslie, and bless her heart, she's wonderful, and told him about Paul's condition and where we were, and I requested that he be put on the prayer list, which he did immediately. I also told Janie, who's also here tonight, or this morning, whenever it is, she's here. She's always there, by the way. I contacted her, and she called her. They go to Chet's Creek, and so now Paul is on our prayer list, and she has got her prayer warriors at Chet's Creek praying for him as well. Well, all the tests were negative, and by Saturday, Paul was pretty much his old self. He was sitting up, he was joking with the nurses, and he was eating his breakfast. He's back. We never really found out what caused the confusion. We think it could have been a medication issue, but we never really knew. And I want to thank each and every one of you who prayed for us, who has continued to pray for us these 8 weeks. The messages that I've received, the emails, cards, you have no idea just how wonderful this church is. And you've been so supportive. But I also want to especially thank Mark and Janie. No one could ask for better adult children than what we have. They have been through all of this. I mean, Mark would call from San Diego. He's a pilot. How's Dad doing? Janie, every day. I'm praying for Paul. I'm praying for Pop. God loves you too, but we sure do as well. Well, we thought we were over the hump. Paul's back. He knows who he is. He knows where he is. He knows that he's not 40, although I think he still wishes he were. So we had other issues this week, and back we go to Beaches. And he is currently in the hospital right now, but we are on the mend, and I think we have finally hit the last roadblock in the road, and I think we're going to be fine from here on out. So prayers are being answered. If you don't think prayer isn't answered, I don't know what universe you're living in, but it ain't here. In catastrophic occasions, such as the one we experience, prayer is, in many instances for Christians, is really the first response. Please make him all right. In intense fear, we seem to almost know to go to God. Help us. Please show us the way. And we look to him to provide the courage for whatever comes, and we ask for his intervention and comfort and guidance. And for some of us, we seek the support of fellow Christians, knowing that it will be provided. But what I want to talk about today is what about the regular times? You know, the usual times, the day-to-day living that we experience on a daily basis. Times when we feel anxious or stressed or afraid because of what we're living in our regular lives. Times when we face things that keep us from being all that we can be. Do we really believe that God is there for us at those times as well as in the bad times? Or do we rely on ourselves and think that the Lord is not really interested in walking with us as we struggle with the mundane, the routine, the trivial? Many people say they believe in a, quote, higher power, but that higher power is really not interested in us as individuals. He, she, or it, depending on what they believe the higher power is, does not intervene with people as individuals because we're just not that important. I strongly oppose and disagree with this belief and have proof that it is just not true. The Bible has many references that attest to the fact that God is with us, each individual one of us, on our daily journey through life. We just need to let him walk with us as a personal support system, as you would with a very good close friend. Now, many of you know that I was a college professor at one time at JU. And when I told Nathan that I wanted to participate as one of the elders sharing the pulpit for these 3 weeks, I immediately went into my prepare a lesson mode. Haven't done it for a while, but you don't lose it. And I knew I wanted to talk about what fear is and what it does to a person, but felt the need to do some what we call in the academic world, reviewing the literature. And in any lesson, one of the first items to one of the first things you do is try to understand the subject that you want to address. So the first thing I did was I went searching for the definition of fear. Good way to start. We tend to think of fear and anxiety in much the same way. Both produce similar responses for danger. And for those of you who are sticklers for accuracy, I don't know if there are any of you out here, but I'm sure there are. I'm going to try to more clearly differentiate between the two. Experts, and this is going to be very academic. This is for Ashley. Experts define fear as an emotional response to a known or definite threat, like the fear of heights. Anxiety, they say, is an unpleasant, vague sense of apprehension, such as worrying about how to make up with a spouse or friend after an argument, or how am I going to pay the bills this month? As an example, when you walk down a dark street and feel uneasy, that's anxiety. However, if you walk down that street and someone comes and holds a knife to your neck, that is fear. In both situations, you will probably experience similar physical sensations: sweating, rapid heart rate, chills, upset stomach, nausea, and even chest pain. Interestingly enough, though, God made us to feel fear and anxiety because it can serve to protect us. We experience uneasy feeling when walking down a dark street in an unsafe area in order to protect us from harm. We are ready to either fight or flee from if real danger presents itself. Fear is a survival mechanism that God instilled in us for the purpose of keeping us safe. Fear also can make things fun, like the high or the rush we get from surviving skydiving, if you're interested in that, or even whitewater rafting, and for kids maybe, that first ride on Space Mountain at Disney World. Remember that? Fear can also be motivational, such as I was afraid to quit because I would disappoint my family, or if I did, I let the team down. But fear and anxiety can also totally keep you from living the life God planned for you. It can paralyze you from truly enjoying life. So the next thing I wanted to find out is, what are we afraid of? Well, there's a laundry list, and they have them categorized in about 15 different ways. But basically, it comes down to disappointment, pain, loneliness, ridicule, rejection, failure, separation, and kind of the big one, death. So we also have a fear called a phobia. These are kind of interesting. A phobia is when we are afraid of snakes or spiders or heights or flying or dogs. They even have a phobia about sewing on buttons. The interesting thing to me was there's a phobia for just about everything, and all of them have funny names you can't pronounce, like tristidicophobia, which is at the 13 or something. Well, we all have fear and anxieties because we're alive and we're part of the world. The major issue is not that we have fear and anxiety, but, and this is the kicker, does your fear control you, or do you control your fear? Does your fear control you, or do you control your fear? Fear has the power to control our daily actions, decisions, and behavior. It can make us think that the irrational is sane. I'm going to repeat that. It can make us think the irrational is sane. For example, I'm afraid of people. I'm afraid they're not going to like me. So I'm going to go along with the crowd. I'm going to go along with the popular people. I'm going to go along with people in influence. And if you think this is only kids saying this, you're wrong. And in ways, sometimes it's so subtle. They can make the fear for being rejected or ridiculed, can make you do things like take drugs, gamble, risky sexual behavior, alcohol, overspending, gambling. All these things can be so insidious, and it's based on the fact we're afraid that people are not going to like us. We're also afraid of being ridiculed, so you just don't do things. I'm not going to do that. I don't want people to make fun of me. I'm going to withdraw and live in my own little world, and I'm not ever going to learn anything new, because then maybe I can't do it right, or maybe I can't learn it at all. And people are going to say I'm stupid. People are also so afraid of dying that they don't want to go to the doctor, because what happens if he or she finds something wrong with me? We had a neighbor who had female issue where she was bleeding, and she was so afraid of having surgery. Her hemoglobin dropped to the point where she literally could barely get out of bed. Her husband urged her to go and have surgery. She refused. And what happened? She ended up with a divorce. She ended up with her child not wanting to have anything to do with her. And now she ends up alone because her fear was so great of the surgery. And you're saying, well, that's the extreme. Well, but there are other things that we do. Remember, fear can make us think the irrational is sane. As a note to us Christians, we need to reach out to those who are acting out of fear and understand that fear can make the irrational seem sane. And often people are afraid that they are unacceptable because of decisions or actions that they've taken in the past. And we may judge them. And if they feel they're unacceptable to us, they're also going to feel they're unacceptable to God. There are so many ways that demonstrate that fear is in control. How about things we don't do because we feel uncomfortable? That saying hello to that person that sits in the pew in front of you that you've never met. Opportunities we refuse to take, like a new job. Thank goodness Nathan said, I'm coming to this church. Trips to new places because we are afraid of flying, or we don't want to meet people. New things that we could learn, but we are afraid of ridicule because we don't do it the best. How about this one? God-given talents we don't develop because we are afraid of disappointment and ridicule. People we don't invite to a Christian fellowship because we're afraid they won't like us anymore, or they'll make fun of us, or they'll say bad things to the neighbor, how weird you are. There's so many other things. Things we avoid, we hide, we postpone. People we don't talk to, or worse, we ridicule or reject because we don't want others to think lesser of us. Never stepping out of our comfort zone for any reason because we are afraid that we just won't measure up. All examples of how fear is in control and we are not. I learned early in life how we can miss out on something memorable because of fear. Now my son is going, oh, she's going to tell the airplane story. Yeah, I'm going to tell the airplane story. When I was about 9 years old, my dad was learning to fly, and he took my brother and I to this general aviation field in Dania. I grew up in Coral Gables. And he would, and we would go flying with them. Well, we were there one day, and this man came into this really neat airplane, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, little girl." No, he didn't say it. He said, would you like to take a flight with me in my plane? And I'm looking at this plane that's got an open cockpit. I think it was a Stearman, open cockpit. And I'm thinking, I'm not too sure about this. And I looked at it, and I went, well, I don't want to go. Well, my brother stepped up. I'll go. Well, he got in the airplane, and I stood there on the ground and watched them fly around in this plane. And my brother came down. He's, that was the most awesome experience I ever had in my whole life. It was awesome. It was wonderful. And I thought, my older brother, I hate you. And let me tell you, to this day, he still talks about that airplane flight. I stood on the ground watching him have an awesome time. And I regret that I let fear get in the way of my having that experience. And I kick myself routinely when I think about that. Fear got in the way of me having a wonderful experience, that I could be like my brother, talking about how wonderful it was, instead of me talking about staying on the ground watching him have a great time. So I learned early, fear can keep you from having a really full life. So how do we live our lives in joy and not in fear? As Christians, we do have the answer. And I will say, one of the first answers is, I hope you have a really good active prayer life, because that is probably the number one way to handle your fear and anxiety. But I want to read today Psalm 27, 1 through 6, and I forgot to look up what it was in the Bible, but it's the 27th Psalm. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evil men advance against me to devour my flesh, when my enemies and my foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then will I be confident. One thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his tabernacle and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his tabernacle I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Psalm 27:1 is the mantra I use whenever I know I'm facing something that causes fear in me. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? I would repeat this over and over on my way to difficult meetings when I was at JU, or with contentious board meetings when I worked for the Board of Nursing. I do it before job interviews or before singing solos. And let me tell you, this morning, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? And you didn't hear me say it, but believe me, I was sitting in that chair saying it. Linda didn't hear me, but I was doing it over and over and over. Anytime if I needed that little extra boost of courage, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? I would really strongly recommend that you choose a verse and use it as your mantra. And use it when you feel fear is taking control. The Bible is loaded with them. The Lord is my refuge and strength. The Lord is the lamp unto my path. God so loved the world. If God is for me, who can be against me? And Paul's favorite, the Lord is my shepherd. Every book in the Bible has several. I would just strongly recommend you find one. Find one that speaks to you, the one that gives you strength, the one that gives you that little extra boost when you need it, that reminds you that God is always with you. I've also found that saying a silent prayer when approaching a difficult conversation or a difficult meeting or a difficult whatever, and this is what I say: please, God, put your words in my mouth. Help me say what you would have me say. And I would say that, help me, God, put the words in my mouth. Then I'm amazed when, guess what happens? The words come out. And then you think, where did that come from? It sure didn't come from me. And I'm going, well, why am I surprised? Didn't I just ask for that? And it came. But I would say again, these are little helpful things for the extra boost. This is not in a place of a regular prayer life. The regular prayer life really keeps you grounded. Please don't think that I never give in to fear, because I do. We all do. But that mantra really helps me. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Who shall be afraid? I believe we all do give in to fear. But as followers of Christ, those who call ourselves Christian and try to live as he does, we have the certainty that he is always with us. He is always there, loving us, forgiving us, accepting us, believing in us, guiding us. Fear can dilute and even ruin our lives if we forget that. Fear that keeps us from living a full life is not from God. Fear that keeps us from living a full life is not from God. As Timothy wrote, God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power. The Lord wants us to take advantage of every talent he has given us and grab every opportunity he sends us. The Lord wants the best for us, and he says so in Isaiah 40. Do you not know, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. And this is a part I really like. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. God wants all of us to soar like eagles. He wants every one of us to run and not grow weary. He wants each and every one of us to walk and not be faint. He wants us to live a life full of joy, not one controlled by fear. And the great news is that Christ is here to help us do just that. As a last word, I've told my kids that on my 80th birthday, I want to ride in that Spearmint. And there is one in St. Augustine. I've given them plenty of warning because that flight is not going to be cheap. But you can believe me, when I get in that airplane, I am going to soar like an eagle.